Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the Legends of Takaful, a podcast series proudly put together by actuarial partners celebrating 40 years of Takaful in Malaysia. So, who is a legend? It's easy to look back and see who is a legend, as hindsight is 2020. But what about the current leaders in Takaful? Who will be the legends of tomorrow? In this series, we'll sit down and have a conversation with pioneers and founders of Takaful in Malaysia. People who truly shaped the industry, going beyond the numbers and finding out what really inspired them, their challenges and struggles, as well as their insights. We truly hope that this will both help drive Takaful forward for the next 40 years, as well as assist countries in just starting out with Takaful. In the first 10 years of Takaful, there was only one operator, Syarikat Takaful Malaysia, or STM. Anyone entering the STM office during those days knew things were done differently. The first time I went to a meeting with the CEO there, Dato Fazli, I even remember having to take my shoes off at the entrance of the floor. They had a monopoly at that time, and they focused on establishing a presence, rather than having the cheapest rates and fierce competition. Back then, the loss ratios for motor business were noticeably better than conventional insurance, which was surprising due to the small size of STM, and the need to be large and strong enough to control the workshops. STM used Bank Islam branches as the main distribution source. The second entrant was Takaful National, or TN, the Takaful operations of the national insurer MNI. TN is now Etika and focused on agency force distribution during those days. Those days we had heavy debates on whether it was acceptable to have agents selling Takaful, promoting actually, as how the model would work, as until that point we used a Mudaraba model, with the operator paying most expenses out of surplus sharing, which occurs at the end of the year. Several years later, Maybank obtained a Takaful license, and TN eventually combined with Maybank Takaful to give rise to Etika, which had a full lineup of agency and bancassurance distribution channels for Takaful, as well as conventional insurance. During the same time, the first re-Takaful operator in Malaysia started, Ariel. So whereas the first operator relied on bank branches, and the second operator relied on its existing agency force infrastructure, Takaful Ikhlas, starting 10 years after TN, had to start from scratch. This led the CEO, Dato Syed Moheeb, to drive a number of innovative solutions, including bringing the Wakalah model over from the Middle East. This represents roughly the halfway point so far of the Takaful journey in Malaysia. Several years later, the era of the multinationals in Takaful began, with a range of global insurers and reinsurers recognizing the potential of this market. Prudential in particular brought synergy to its products, creating Takaful equivalents of its conventional insurance products, especially unit-linked plans. This was also the time that Bank Negara really strengthened the regulatory focus on Takaful through JPIT. Regulations were held fairly consistent between Takaful and conventional insurance, with the goal of creating a level playing field. Today, Takaful is at a crossroads in Malaysia. Although we've come a long way, we still have a long way to go to rival conventional insurance in Malaysia. Will Takaful focus on consistency with conventional insurance? Or will there be increasing innovation in the models used as well as market segments focused on? Will we be able to use Takaful to increase insurance penetration in Malaysia, especially underserved markets? Insurance in any form is about managing risks and building trust. Takaful can truly be key in many market segments in building this trust and forming the foundation of a population that understands its risks and how to manage them. This is the foundation of true financial literacy, which must be a goal for the next 40 years. Actuarial Partners has been involved since the beginning of Takaful in Malaysia and has been involved in some way with all the Takaful operators here. We truly hope that this podcast series is useful and the next 40 years of Takaful development is equally exciting. Malaysia boleh.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hi everyone. Welcome to episode 2 of the series Legends of Takaful. The series aims to celebrate the individuals who have contributed to the early development of the Takaful industry in Malaysia. 2024, as you know, marks the 40th anniversary of the establishment of the first Takaful company in Malaysia. Today, we welcome Dato Syed Moheeb Syed Kamarulzaman. Dato, firstly, welcome and thank you for making time to join me in this podcast. Perhaps you can start by telling our viewers your journey to Takaful. I actually did not realize that prior to joining the Takaful industry, you had already clocked up 27 years in the insurance industry. That's a pretty long time. And you look pretty young.
I'm young. Alhamdulillah. Thank you, Zainal, for having me on this podcast. It's always a pleasure to be reminiscing about the past, especially on a subject that is very close to my heart. I started working in December 1975, right? So that marks 48th year this year, or rather last year, in the financial services industry. Well, how did I start on this journey? I'm one of those few people who joined insurance by choice. Mostly those who joined the industry were MBA, masuk by accident, right? So, but for me, it was by choice. I was working during holidays between exam in April and September in one insurance company, and I found that I really loved the job. It suited my life purpose, which is basically to be helping people and to make a difference. At that age, you're so passionate and you have ideals and all that. So wanting to help people was the one thing that changed my course of studies. I was doing law before, but then I decided that insurance is the thing that I want to do. And the company offered me a job, and I started in December.
Which company was that?
Royal Insurance. And I was there for 16 and a half years. Royal Insurance was a British general insurance company. And they were very technical and very academic in their approach. It helped me because they put me through a 2-year program. 2-year induction program, and one of the requirements was that I should progress in the CII examination. If I do not have
It's a Chartered Insurance Institute,
yes,
the UK-based exam.
The UK Chartered Insurance Institute, and they expect you to pass 2 subjects every year. At that time, the sitting was only once a year. And that induction involves my going into all the various departments, starting with motor, fire, miscellaneous accident, engineering, as well as claims. So that gave me basic grounding into all the areas, including reinsurance. And what is interesting about that training or that 2-year punya injection was that we had a logbook of our program. Every department that we went to, there were objectives as to what we would learn. At the end of that stint in that particular department, we put down what our key learnings were. There was an assessment by the supervisor, and everything is kept in the personal file. So very, very structured and very, very developmental in that respect. So Royal Insurance gave me a basic grounding, but it also gave me a chance to grow over the 16 years. Besides underwriting, besides claims, they got me involved in marketing. They got me involved in reinsurance. They got me involved in a lot of areas. So much so that I was able to grow up to be AGM when I left. The next, and that gave me some idea of how the insurance market in UK worked as well, because over the 16 years, there were a few times that I was sent on attachment in UK companies and attachments over long periods, 3 months, 4 months, 5 months kind of attachments. I then got an offer from Aetna Universal Insurance, again general insurance, the general insurance division, and that was at a time when they were contemplating shutting down their general insurance business
In Malaysia.
in Malaysia. Over the years, the general insurance division had not been making any money. That division continued to bleed the company. So they said that, okay, let's give this a final try. Let's bring in somebody who may be able to turn the tide around. So they approached me and I said, okay, let's just try. Let's see whether I'm able to replicate what I have learned or what I see in Royal Insurance into that particular division. And it wasn't too difficult because that company was hurting because of just poor portfolio mix, as well as lack of technical staff. So the two things which I did over there were basically portfolio pruning, as well as having or building a strategy that that was based on the technical strength that we had, whilst building up expertise in other areas. And I was at Aetna for about 4 years. One thing about Aetna is that, being American, they were very results driven. They were very, very results driven. They measured everything. They were very, very clear as to their KPIs expected of people leaders. And they set very, very high targets as well. Long story short, after a few years, after 2 years, there was a turn, there was a change in the financials. We were on the road to recovery. So I had the exposure of learning the British way of managing a company, as well as the American results-driven way. 4 years down the road, Master Carriage, who had just bought into Proton, decided that they wanted to expand their financial supermarket by buying into an insurance company. So they bought into Southeast Asia Insurance. And the owners of Master Carriage were my former seniors in school, a former head boy, as well as somebody 1 year senior. And they asked if I could come in to lead the new company. It was Southeast Asia Insurance. And the idea was to change a motor-based insurance company into an insurance company that is able to handle all classes of commercial insurance. So there were two things which were needed over there. One was redeveloping the technical expertise again into areas which are outside of the motor insurance, and of course with that was developing the processes and looking into the systems to manage that business. When I agreed to take up the job, I had a 3-year plan of what I wanted to do over there. And we went through and we delivered that 3-year plan, and I left. And I left after 3 years because my job was already done. I wanted to do that, and I already had plans after 3 years, and that was to develop my understanding of reinsurance, of reinsurance. So I, in the course of that 3 years, I focused on building up reinsurance support for that company, South Asia Insurance, but at the same time also building relationship with reinsurers, and I got a job with a German reinsurance company.
Which one is that?
Gerling Global. Gerling Global
Wow,
Insurance.
Gerling.
Yeah.
Old name.
It's an old company. It was at that time one of the few private-owned companies, private-owned reinsurance companies. The rest were all stock companies. And I was there for 4 years. And the idea of going there was basically just to learn reinsurance, the technicalities, the management. 1, 2. The idea was also to expose myself to the international market. Being CEO of Gerling Global Insurance allowed me to visit companies between Pakistan to Vietnam. So I had India, I had Bangladesh, I had Burma, Myanmar, Maldives, and then the South Asia countries. And that gave me the connections which I needed. It also offered me an opportunity to help them with their direct insurance strategies and all that. So whatever that I acquired at Royal, at Aetna, was put to good use, because these were basically, my clients then were basically small companies whose market was also just developing. So we were able to introduce new ideas, new schemes to them. The other thing about Gerling Global was, again, from the management perspective, their style was different. One thing
German.
German. You must stir the coffee this way and not that way. You can't go out of the normal routine and whatever written instruction they had. But they were very, 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 very detailed and very, very meticulous in everything that they set out to do. So that sort of taught me that you can't play around if you want to do something right. You got to be very clear. You got to articulate things clearly, and you got to make sure that what you articulate are actually being done. It's just like a SIRIM audit. It's just like a process, a very detailed process audit there. One of the things that happened during that time with Aetna and Gerling was that on the personal side, one of our close friends, one of my wife's close friends, was terminally ill. And we spent a lot of time with her. And at the same time as well, I started going back to reading religious books, Quran, and all that. So it was almost like a born again Muslim kind of thing, and that gave me a different view of what we are here for, the purpose of life, etc., etc. And at the same time, at Gerling as well, it gave me the opportunity to work with Takaful companies. We had Takaful Malaysia was one of our clients. I also visited Takaful National, and then there were.
What year was that? I mean, you joined Gerling specifically. What year was that?
That was with
Gerling.
Aetna. Okay, Gerling was 1998 to 2001, 2002.
So in 1998, we already had Takaful Malaysia, of course.
Right.
And we also had Takaful National.
They were just starting.
Or they were just starting at the point in time.
Yeah, they were just starting or just started.
And of course, during the early years of Takaful.
And then there was Takaful Brunei as well.
Of course, Takaful Brunei. And of course, during the early years of Takaful, there was a lack of capacity in Takaful.
Right.
So basically, Takaful companies had dispensation from the Sharia by scholars that they can use reinsurance.
Yes.
So basically, that's where you came in, with Gerling. You were able to offer these Takaful companies.
Yes.
The capacity, but
at that time, there was no Takaful capacity.
Yeah.
Although Munich Re at that time was already contemplating or starting something, because I remember having some chats with them at the Singapore Reinsurance Conference, etc. But it was still, they were I mean, in terms of providing capacity to the market, the leaders were still Munich Re and Swiss Re conventional, and we led on a few accounts, but we were following on most of the other accounts. So that allowed me a window into Takaful and Takaful operations. I went for my second Hajj in 2009 and 2001, December 2001. And, being born again and being exposed to Takaful, one of the supplications that I did during the Hajj was for an opportunity to be working in a more halal environment. And just that, a coincidence was when I came back, Anwar Hassan, the CEO of Malaysian National Re, called me up. And I came back early January. In February, a month later, he called me up and says, and he asked me, would you like to help us start a Takaful company?
Well, they were immediate response.
Immediate after the supplication, after the dua, call came. Without hesitation, without discussing anything, I said yes. I said yes. So that was how I got into Takaful, and that was in February. I eventually joined MNRB, probably 3-4 months notice, June, July. And during February to June, July, I sort of prepared my plans of how I want to build this company. Because MNRB being a national reinsurance company, they had no direct writing experience. They had no systems to support it. They had nothing. So it was really building things from scratch. And the things that I gained at Royal Insurance, at Aetna Universal, as well as at Girling, were just sort of the right ingredients to, as well as Southeast Insurance, were just the right ingredients to build a new company. Sorry, long answer to a simple question.
No, I think we have to realize that, our journey in life has always been, we always, as Muslims, we basically understand that, there's a purpose. Each individual has a purpose. Inshallah, is to be a good Muslim, of course, and also to help the ummah.
Yeah.
So that I think that's, although it was quite a long kind of discourse. I think it's important because I think our viewers have to appreciate that, from the perspective of Takaful operation, it is not actually simple. I think insurance by itself is complicated. Not many people understand how insurance works. And the fact that you had extensive experience in insurance and then subsequently in reinsurance, I'm sure put you to good stead in your stint as a CEO of a Takaful company. But I think one thing is that, it was primarily general insurance though, isn't it? You didn't have much experience in terms of life insurance.
Okay. At Aetna, I was exposed to the life side, being part of the executive committee, being part of the what they call senior management. When it comes to policy decisions, broad policy decisions, they have multi-discipline committees to be looking at it. So in terms of HR, in terms of strategies mainly, I was involved in that as part of the group to discuss it. So yeah, you're right in that in terms of real rolling up the sleeve, hands-on experience, it wasn't. I did not have it, but at least I was exposed. Yeah. But I think the point that you are alluding to is then how did I build up, or how did I go into developing plans to run a composite insurance company?
Yeah, this is the thing as well, because I think our viewers would also need to appreciate that the first few Takaful companies in Malaysia were given composite license. And this is something which is, I think, very important in the establishment of a startup, because life insurance takes time to actually mature, which means that maybe it takes 5 to 10 years time before a life insurance operation basically generates profits for the shareholders. But a general insurance operation has the opportunity, has the capacity or capability, if you like, to actually generate profits earlier. So having a composite operation, helps shareholders in terms of its capital requirement. But I think Takaful, the Takaful company that you started was probably the last batch that a composite license. I think subsequent to that, Bank Negara or regulator decided that we have only family Takaful.
No. Okay. In 2005, Bank Negara issued five more licenses. Two were, was it two? HSBC. What was the other one? But there were a couple that were composite, and then the rest were
okay.
Sorry.
MEA as well. MEA had a composite license as well. Yeah. And anyway, so I think that's good. And then basically, I think we have to follow on with the story. Basically, you were called in by MNRB, which was our national Malaysian reinsurance company. They were purely basically reinsuring on the general insurance side. And they were given this opportunity to start Takaful, and then you came back from the Hajj, and basically you were offered a job, and your sort of experience were more or less, well, more rather than less, actually ensured that when you went in, you had a very solid grounding as far as insurance and reinsurance is concerned, inclusive of some experience in terms of life insurance. Let me ask the next question. Now, we had Takaful Malaysia, and then we had MNI Takaful. Those are the two Takaful companies that were given licenses before you. The names of these companies actually reflects the entities that were the parent company. In the case of MNI, MNI is National Insurance Company. The basically a local composite company. So the names of MNI Takaful reflected the parent MNI. How did the name Takaful Ikhlas come into being? Because Takaful Ikhlas is not necessarily something that you can think of overnight. Maybe there's a story behind that.
Oh, certainly. Well, actually, we were not the third Takaful company. When MNRB was talking to me about starting a new Takaful company, we didn't know that Maybank.
Oh yes.
Maybank was also
banking, our biggest also, banking company.
Yeah. They were also given a verbal approval, and they were already planning for the new company, and they were launched about 6 months before Takaful Ikhlas. So the question is, how did the name Takaful Ikhlas came about? I mentioned earlier that Anwar spoke to me in February, and I joined them in mid-June. So during that time, there were already work going on the corporate side of MNRB, and one of the things that they did was, well, they announced to their staff, and everybody was excited. They had a company naming competition on amongst the staff. With some prize money for the name, for the suggestion if it is used. So when we had our first steering committee meeting, one of the things was to look at the 200, 300 suggestions that came in, and they were very nice suggestions. Arabic sounding, Sanskrit sounding, Hindi sounding, But the chairman, Syed Moheeb, at that time, after going through the list and all that, after shortlisting, after looking at the shortlisted names, he said that, it's too Arabic, and we should be going for the general market. our work should be to introduce a Sharia-based insurance to all communities, irrespective of origin. So let's have a name that is simple, that is clearly understood, that is acceptable, and one that is emotive. You know, that you say the word and people understand what we stand for. And then he said, something like Kurnia Insurance. The name is so simple. It is a gift. Kurnia is a gift.
In Malay language, Kurnia means.
Yeah, in Malay language. So he wanted something that is simple. And, I mentioned to you that I was almost born again Muslim, and I was carrying the Quran, translation of the Quran everywhere I go. And it so happened that at that meeting, I had a translation of the Quran with me. And I just happened, and just as Syed Muhammad said that, I just happened to open the page. And of course, guess what?
Surah Ikhlas.
Surah Al-Ikhlas. so I blurted out, how about Takaful Ikhlas? Everybody just looked at me, and Syed Muhammad said, okay, the Al sounds a bit Arabic, but if we were to drop the Al, Takaful Ikhlas, that says a lot. That says a lot. It talks about values. It talks about transparency.
The Ikhlas in Malay basically means
sincerity.
Yes.
In everything that we do, and of course, other connotations, transparency, trust. Insurance is about gaining people's trust, and we can do so by being sincere in everything that we do. So that's how
the name came about. So you're also the father of the name Takaful Ikhlas.
Well, I contributed to that, but I didn't get the prize money.
Prize money. Okay. That's not good.
And there's also another follow-up story to that. So after we decided on the name, and we had to come up with a logo. We put up. We called a few agencies. There were some proposals that come in, and one of these suggestion, the graphic was to follow MNRB's sheltering wave. The old MNRB logo had a sheltering wave, so it looks like that. And then what is the logic behind the sheltering wave? I can't.
Insurance is about protection.
I can't recall now. Yeah, maybe sheltering. But then, because this is an anak, a child of the parent, right? So there was a smaller sheltering wave
underneath,
and when you put those two things together, it's just like us doing supplication, and that is the theme behind the logo of Takaful Ikhlas. Takaful Ikhlas logo is like that, and it's just it is as if we are in supplication, and in supplication is both in gratitude as well as in hope.
Wonderful.
So the gratitude also afterwards. There's a story. The barakah, gratitude is barakah.
Yes.
We get God's grace, God's blessing. And we translated that into how we develop our strategy as well.
That's good. All right. So it would be expected that the CEO of any startup will be given a brief by the board as to the company's expectations. I mean, when we had Dato Fazli in the podcast, he articulated that, the board was effectively giving him the expectations that you need to be profitable soon rather than later. So what was the brief given to you? What was the company's expectations as far as this startup is concerned? Keeping in mind that MNRB, I think at that point of time, was a quoted company already. They were already quoted in the Kuala Lumpur Stock Exchange.
Right.
And Takaful Ikhlas was basically a 100% owned subsidiary of MNRB.
Yes. Certainly, profitability featured high up in the agenda that was set up for me. Basically, there were 5 elements in what they told me. One was to to create a company that is modern, that is dynamic, that provides fast return to shareholders, and that sustains its top position. Right? That was the first one. I mean, it is expected of any large company, right? That then obviously to be able to do that, that company has got to be effective and efficient in everything that's done in the organization. So then they zoom into the next line, which is basically ensure that the processes and how we run things are not only effective, that not only that they bear results, but also done in the shortest time possible. The third one was being a company that's already in the forefront of the insurance industry, because being the national reinsurance company, the MNRB provided sector leadership as well as thought leadership. They also want us, Takaful Ikhlas, to do the same as well, to be a market sector leader in all areas, including thought leadership as well. And of course, is the other aspect is that we need to be lean. We need to make sure that we minimize errors, etc. We are aligned to the needs of the customer. So if you look at that 5 elements there, it is as if they are saying, be a company that practice total quality management, total quality management. And I have to say that because I studied TQM somewhere in that 27 years before joining the insurance industry. So when that brief was put on paper, I said, look, all that they're asking us to do is to be a quality company, be a company that is excellent, and to do it from the Islamic perspective, right? From the Islamic perspective. So for us, we needed to find a model, and the model that we followed in developing our strategies and all that was basically the European quality business model. But albeit looking at things from the Islamic perspective. When we started, IKIM also was looking at
IKIM being
Islamic Knowledge Institute of Malaysia.
You were involved in starting that up as well?
No. Well, they if I'm not mistaken, they were or they are an institution that spreads is broader Islamic understanding in terms of commerce, in terms of other areas besides Fardhu Ain, etc. I mean, there is an Hakim station as well.
Hakim station, a radio station as well.
Hakim radio station. So, but this is the other side of the Islamic knowledge, in that they were also doing research into new thinking, and one of the areas that they were looking at was quality management from the Islamic perspective. From the Sharia perspective. So I was already familiar with implementation of the EQBM, and there were books written by IKIM on the Islamic perspective of quality. So these were the two references that I used. So the brief from the board was very clear, which I took it as build an excellent company, build a company that strives on excellence, and then how to go about it. There were materials and there were discussions already going on outside there.
Okay, interesting. So effectively, they're giving you clear directions in terms of where they expect you to take the new company. But of course, startups are not easy. it's difficult. But so how do you set to deliver the expectations? Because you started with a blank sheet of paper. You're the first employee of the company. Takaful is not exactly something which is well established at that point of time. There's system requirements, there's people requirements, and many other challenges, I'm sure. Maybe you can give the audience, some kind of overview in terms of the challenges you had in terms of delivering these expectations.
Well, you mentioned just now about my exposure being only on general insurance, and
no, not only, mainly.
Well, I would say substantially lah. Substantially lah. And I recognize that as a weakness in setting up a composite company. So certainly when you know little, you find people who know more, right? So the selection of my support
team,
my team was very, very critical to the success, to the how well we would be able to move subsequently. So between February to June, it was basically for me putting up some macro thoughts of what to do and who in the industry, identifying those people in the industry that would be able to help me when they, as well as when I would want them to join, because building things from scratch, you need to build up the broad picture first, and then you go down one level, do the detailing, and then you go into micro detailing, etc. So we didn't want to. So we want to make sure that we recruit at the right time as well. In recruiting people for all those levels as well as the requisite details, we need to be recruiting people based on the competencies that is required to deliver those jobs. And we didn't have any competency framework to help. Even at Aetna, whilst there was no such competency framework. So what I did was on the family side, on the life insurance side, there were two key people that I needed to recruit. One was somebody who has had exposure in Takaful before and who has a broad idea of how the Takaful model would need to be crafted. One person like that, and one who is strong operationally. So those were the two key people, two of three key people that I first recruited. And the third person was a Sharia, the head of Sharia compliance, because we wanted to make sure that whatever that we do from the start, there is a Sharia input as well, and it was quite difficult to identify anybody already working in the industry. So the person that I finally recruited was somebody who had just come back from Jordan, who had been exposed to thinking, thoughts, discussions overseas, and who looks at and who understands fiqh muamalat from the broader perspective of things. Okay, I mean, how would I know whether the person has it or not? Because I'm not a Sharia person myself, but coming from a state, coming from a province that has practices Sunnah more than I would say any other area, right? I sort of like someone who also has who is also more committed to applying sunnah in the everyday practices, and this has it.
I think, I mean, of course, there are lots of regulations in place in terms of, who qualifies as a Sharia board member, guidance in terms of, how you should run your operation. I think at that point of time, those were still very much in its infancy. So I think you had some, in a plus, a negative way. In a plus, in the sense that you've got the ability, to decide, how, for example, the Sharia scholar that you decided that should lead this new company, and you are able to recruit, well, I think you recruited from the industry, basically, isn't it? I mean, you recruited from the Takaful industry or from the insurance industry?
The person who understood Takaful models was already from the
Takaful industry. Yeah. So I think that's a challenge, and I think from the perspective of startups, you need people who are experienced. So Takaful Ikhlas was fortunate in the sense that they had you to become the CEO. But one man does not make a company, and the next one was actually to recruit a team. And I think this is something that perhaps our overseas audience would have perhaps difficulty in, if they were to start Takaful from scratch, where to get the necessary kind of manpower that will actually ensure that the company starts out on the right footing. So yes, I think recruitment is very important. And you at that point of time, regulations were not really in place just yet for Takaful operations. So you had flexibility. So in the sense that you had to make some decisions in terms of who should be in your team.
Right. So you are right about a recruitment being important, and initially there was an inclination to be recruiting people with Takaful experience. And of course. There was some hue and cry from the industry. Why are you cannibalizing? Why, and there was complaint letters that went out to the regulator, both from Takaful operator as well as conventional insurance, because we wanted experience. But when the complaints came in, we made a decision that we will only recruit the top ones with experience, and those lower down, fresh graduates or those who had already left the industry, worked somewhere else, and joined. And that means that we needed to imbue them, equip them with the right knowledge. Right, with the right knowledge. We worked with the International Islamic University
in Kuala Lumpur.
In Kuala Lumpur to develop two sets of programs. One for management and one for those lower down. That's one. And then we also work with Fitra Perkasa. I'm not quite sure. It is an organization that does culture training. No, I think the company is called Perkasa. What was it? Perkasa Diri program. Perkasa Diri. Sorry. Sorry. Yeah. The program
it's
is called
company. Don't worry.
It is a company, but basically it is instilling good values into you, and for you to understand the Quranic and the Hadith scriptures from a different perspective. The lead was Ustaz Pahrul, and he came to see me in 2003, just after we started. When he described that program, it was exactly what we wanted to do, in that and that we want to instill the right values in people, so that then will form their attitudes and then direct their behavior. Because a lot of things that we want to do is derived from having the right values. So we had this program, and all staff right up to, I think by the time I left the company 10 years later, all new staff had to go through these two programs, the Islamic finance programs, as well as the Fitrah Perkasa value program. The other thing that we also put the staff through was through project management, understanding project planning, understanding project implementation and monitoring. Because whatever that we do had to be done within the time frame, and the results have got to be delivered. And the results are not just the action, but the outcomes from the projects as well. So we needed everyone to understand project management. In those days, the word agile wasn't used yet, but basically we were already practicing agile form of project management at that time. And what I mean was that whatever that you wanted to do, there was micro details of all action steps, as well as measurement of the outcomes every few days. So and if things do not move beyond one, then we actually sat down and discussed what can be done to move it, so that we can we can see the results faster. And in the 6 months from January, from June to December, it was not uncommon for the small team that we were slowly recruiting to be working until midnight. And there were days as well where people like Saiful Bahri and the key people even spend the night over at MNRB just to make sure that the project is that the one item in the project gets done. And I can say that was a big sacrifice, because sleeping over at MNRB is difficult. You know, is what we say, the place is keras.
Hard. Keras
The
and
place hard, you know, and they must have been very, very tired for them not to be
sleeping on the hard floor, yeah.
Woken at night. Well, keras is something else.
Yeah.
So we had many projects running at the same time, and we needed to make sure that all the projects eventually come into a critical path leading to end-to-end outcome. The other thing was that we needed to be an agency-based company, because we didn't have any stakeholders that was a bank or anything like that. So how do you build new agents? How do you develop them to be top producing? There was a need to build mental strength of the agent. There was a need to do scripts for them, etc., etc. And we had a program called what was it? I can't remember the actual name, but it was developed by Colonel Izzidin, who at one time transformed Prudential agents. So he helped instill mental strength. He helped instill comradeship, teamwork into the agents. He helped them build up the drive and the passion to understand that their work is about helping families and not just the sales and all that. So it was focused on developing high performance team in high performance agency network as well, and there was constant reminders. Earlier on, I mentioned about Barakah and all that. You know, our logo itself
Application.
reflects supplication, and whatever that we seek for and we get is only because of the benevolence of the Almighty, and that requires us to keep on reminding staff that we are together in this, that for every step that we make, for every sacrifice that we do individually, we are actually taking a step towards Him. And when we take a step towards Him, He will take 10 steps towards us. So the barakah will be a greater not only for us, but for the company as well. Now, of course, we started planning from scratch. There was no system to start with. We wanted to crystallize Bank Negara's concept paper on Wakalah, and we had to work with an IT company building things up from scratch. And our Takaful model requires us to be dripping the profits.
Yeah. That one. I mean, that actually flows nicely to the next question. And because Takaful Ikhlas was actually the first company in Malaysia to apply the Wakalah model. I mean, you mentioned that there was already a Bank Negara paper on the Wakalah model, so it was not actually something that you started.
No.
Bank Negara already had a concept paper on the Wakalah.
A concept paper, yeah. But I think Ikhlas crystallized that into operation. I think even Maybank Takaful that came out earlier than us.
6 months earlier than you, yeah.
Initially started on the Mudarabah model.
Yeah. Which is what the first two Takaful companies in Malaysia adopted.
Yeah. Which the first two adopted. Yes, that's right. So to do it on a Wakalah model, and with a promise that the profit drippings will be, I can't remember whether it was daily drippings or monthly drippings.
I think we need to explain what dripping is all about, because I think basically that if I can sort of help to assist. So the whole idea of the Wakalah model is that you basically would charge the participant a fee, for managing the Takaful business, and the fee that is charged need not necessarily coincide or be synchronous with the contribution of premium that actually paid the Takaful operator. So what happens is that in the Wakalah model that Takaful Ikhlas basically practice is that the contribution from the participants is first paid into a participant's account. So this effectively is where the contributions will accumulate, and then in terms of the tabaruk that's required to provide or to pay for the death benefit, that is effectively dripped or paid into the tabaruk fund or the participants' special account, if you like to call it that. Okay? So this was a drip product. The challenge, of course, is that you have to have a good system with which you're able to manage to ensure that the drip is correct, because it is a bit of a challenge, because the amount that you drip into the tabaruk fund or the participant special account is not the same. It is for family Takaful. So here we're talking about the family Takaful in terms of the participant's account and the participant special account and participant's risk account. Is dependent on the age of the individual, and maybe even there could be some additional contribution because it's an impaired life, for example. So this is basically on the family side. I think on the general side, though, it was much simpler, isn't it? Because on general side, we're talking about annual contribution, and therefore you just split the Wakalah fee and you pay the rest into the participant's risk account, basically. So please go ahead. The system challenges.
No. I have thank you for re-educating me on what the model is, because a lot of things, the detailing, I've sort of forgotten. It's been how many years now? 20 years. Um, um, how long has it been? 2012 that I left, or 11 years. But certainly there was a challenge to develop an IT system from scratch. We signed the IT company on 1st of April, if I'm not mistaken, with instructions for them to deliver a system to us that can cater to 4 different products within 3 months. So
that's life in general?
Life in general. 2 life products.
2 life products and 2 general products.
Two general products. Now, subsequently, once that vanilla version was done, it's just a matter of replicating that for the other products. The other, well, we are still on the topic of how did we deliver what we set out. How did we do what we set out to do? Was the other thing that we did was we had weekly taskiras where we remind staff, where we keep staff informed of how things are going on. That was a weekly meeting, and besides the monthly town halls. But more importantly, when we started 1st of July, from May, June, 1st of July, subsequently there was a need to actually monitor and ensure that all our business garnering activities were coming on stream. We had fortnightly war room meetings.
War room meetings.
You know, and it's actually a war room because every unit had to go through their actions, report on the results, look at the gaps and what are the corrective actions that needs to be.
I think that this is something very, very important, because I mean, you had 2 challenges, as a startup. Firstly, implementing a new operating model, the Wakalah model, which is system intensive. So that has its own kind of challenges. And secondly, is actually the first Takaful company that actually depended entirely on an agency system to distribute its products. Because as we all know that, Takaful insurance basically is not bought, it's sold. So it also applies to Takaful that you need to actually go out there and to actually, the agents need to go out there and to convince the public, if you like, that Takaful is necessary, for your protection. And I've always sort of been of the view that insurance is not easy to distribute, to sell to agencies, because for many reasons. But you have another layer of difficulty, because here we need agents as well to be able to explain to the public what Takaful is all about and how Takaful is different from insurance. I mean, it is quite apparent that, as far as Takaful Ikhlas is concerned, you place equal importance on the release aspect of it, in terms of the fact that everything that we do, basically, we have to keep in mind, our responsibility as a Muslim. Yeah. So, I mean, if you could dwell a bit in terms of the challenges for your agents, because this is very, very important, because they're the one that actually brings in the business. They bring the worker. Whenever you bring in a dollar of a contribution, a certain percentage of that is a wakalah fee. And so if you don't get that dollar, you don't get the wakalah fee, you basically won't be able to pay your expenses. Perhaps a bit the challenges about agencies.
Yeah. If I can add to that, I mean, just to continue a bit more on that war room, and during the war room, we have the business admin people to go through their performance. We also have the support team there as well, in case there are issues which is stalling the processes that is affecting generation of income. The other thing you mentioned about agency performance what we did, and I'm quite sure this is common in other Takaful companies as well, is that we have monthly meetings with the agency association, just like the war room. Just like
So the war room, you didn't have the agents in there?
No.
It's I thought you had the agents in there as well, because they have to go out there and get the business.
Yeah.
That's the war.
But you know, because sometimes there are issues which started from the agency side. So there are some sensitivities there. So we had to separate the group. But we had a separate. We had separate meetings with the agency force on a monthly basis as well. And again, in that meeting, there's the business administration people as well as the support team as well, looking at whatever grouses and all that. For the agents, you spoke about training them. You spoke about exposing them to new Sharia knowledge, etc. Our Sharia compliance, or rather Takaful Ikhlas compliance team, developed a program, again a value-based program which forms the basic program for them before they go into the agency real program. So in that program, we call it Wasilah Kesejahteraan. You know, it's basically talking about ethics and moralities of sale from the Islamic perspective.
At that point of time, there was still not yet. Was there at that point of time already an institution like MII, Malaysian Insurance Institute, whereby agents have to go through and be trained before they get basically the license, if you like, to sell?
I'm not quite sure when the Takaful basic exam was introduced
For agents.
For agents. But certainly, I think the Malaysian Takaful Association itself only came into being after Takaful Ikhlas was formed. So the initial, probably in 2003, there wasn't this basic licensing requirement yet, but already there was the PCEA on the conventional side. So on our side. Certainly for us, we made sure that the agents that we recruit at least had the PCEA,
PCA,
proficiency PEAC, proficiency certificate
on the conventional side. So the agents should have already, not on the Takaful side, but on the conventional side, they should already got the certification.
So that certification, and then we also supplement that with our Wasilah Kesejahteraan,
which is basically the Takaful overlay, we like.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. So even when the Takaful basic exam subsequently came into being, the Wasilah Kesejahteraan was still a requisite for all new agents to go through. I think the initial year 2003 to 2004 was very much in creating a learning organization, both internal as well as our intermediaries.
Okay. So maybe that good run into the next question. I mean, you mentioned the challenges and that you face in terms of starting the Takaful operation, and your desire to ensure that you're not just setting up any Takaful operation, to ensure that from the perspective of your operation is holistic, looking from the perspective of the business itself, but also the ethics. Because it's very important that you differentiate yourself from insurance. So what would you say are the uniqueness, if you like, about Takaful Ikhlas? What differentiate you from other companies?
Well, our tagline when we started was dynamic, progressive, ikhlas, right? Well, you know what that means is moving on the go, progressive. Basically, we have state-of-art applications. Of course, at that time, apps wasn't there quite yet. But basically, we promised to have to make it easy for people to interact with us through technology, whatever was there at that particular time, and then Ikhlas. So these were the three words that we put out to our target markets, in that we are different from other Takaful operators. And we need to be looking different as well. So we make sure that our staff are seen to understand Sharia. Seen to understand Sharia. So we created opportunities for them to be on stage. We created opportunities for them to interact with more of the public. We make sure that we participated in every speaking opportunity. We make sure that we are seen. Everywhere we go, we'll be wearing our dark green tunic and all that. We make sure that we are, the staff, when they go out, are seen to be fast. FAST. And FAST stands for Fatana, Amanah, Siddiq, and Tabligh. And exactly the things that I mentioned just now. Fatana is wisdom, is wise, knowledgeable. Amanah is trustworthy. Siddiq is truthful. Tabligh is communicating, dakwah, preaching, etc., etc. So that was the persona that we wanted to put to the public. But more importantly, behind everything, we, Takaful Ikhlas, believe that we can only be successful if we move closer to the Almighty, and we believe that barakah will come to us if we hold fast to our religious obligations. So internally, we made sure that we do congressional prayers, Zuhur and Asar. When it comes to Asar, when there's Azan, we just spread our praying mats in the office on the floor, and we pray in the office. So things like that. But whilst when we did that, it was not with any intention to make a name or to make anything of it, but word spread that was what we do. And the Sharia brand sort of shown in the name itself. So if you were to ask what was Takaful Ikhlas' unique selling proposition, then possibly I would say that we try to be Sharia based in everything that we do.
Yeah. Okay. So I think this is a very important aspect as well, because if I'm not mistaken, what you're trying to say here is that there's a culture that you cultivated in the company. Would that be right, in the sense that effectively, you, as I said just now, you were looking at the company on a holistic basis, not just technically, but also from the Sharia perspective. So you can only sort of have that projection, if you like, if you have the culture within the company. So would that be the point, that you try to cultivate the culture within your operations?
It's basically instilling Islamic values within the people, because there is a verse that says that the fortune of a community will not change unless they change what is within themselves.
Yes.
Right. So that is the crux of it. So we set out to actually change their mindset, change their values, because that will then make them behave, have the right attitude, and be better Muslims. Once we are better Muslims, we are quite certain that Allah will open His doors to us.
So you mentioned that Ikhlas tried harder to be Sharia-based, or you inferred the issue of Sharia-based, not just Sharia compliant. So I think what you're trying to say here is that, when you talk about Sharia compliant, you're just saying that, we are in compliance, if you like, in terms of the rulings of the Sharia scholars. And when you talk about Sharia-based, you're saying that let's go back to first principles in terms of what is espoused in the Quran and what's basically in the Sunnah. All right. So maybe you can elaborate a bit in terms of that, because that would imply that, there's certain levels of compliance, as it were.
Okay. I find it a bit difficult to answer that question now, because I can't often think of any examples. But certainly the policies, the policy wordings come out, or the policy wordings that come out was scrutinized in detail, not just by our Sharia compliance, but by a team to make sure that that the transactional wordings conform and comply with any Sharia advisory ruling in the past. But I think when it comes to being Sharia based, it is the spirit in how we handle everything, from in terms of business acceptance and in terms to claims, right? When we try to relate that back to the Quran, right? Like for example, Ya ayyuhallazina amanu awfu bil uqud, fulfill all obligations. So the word obligation there, has we interpret it in a more liberal sense. There are claims which perhaps are technically, how shall I say, not payable, but when it comes into looking at the claims, we tend to look at it from the position of the claimant rather than from the technical aspects. That's one example. In terms of basic things like communication, people calling in and asking for information, how we respond, the correctness, the promptness, and all that as well. So we try to
go the extra mile.
To actually deliver what is not within the compliancy thing. We do. When you talk about amanah, there's we tend to interpret that in a bit more wider sense.
So I think where you're coming from is that you are trying to make it such that Takaful Ikhlas as a company cares about its policyholders. So you look at it from the perspective as well from the policy of participants.
But it is a delicate balance, because we also have obligations to our shareholders as well. Of course. Mindful of the brief. So there is that balance, and it is always a challenge to be communicating the expectations, of both sides. How we push the agents and all that.
I mean, there's always a delicate balance. I mean, this is the reality of life per se, because in the end, it is still a business. I mean, you still continue to be active in the industry. I mean, this is something that I noticed. I mean, how many years is it now since you left Takaful Ikhlas? 11 years.
11 years. Yeah.
But it seems like yesterday.
Oh no! It seems like 20 years.
20 years.
Why I say that is I actually long to go back in I still think that there are areas that I can help.
Yeah.
I still think that there are areas that I can share, and it would be a shame if what I know is not tapped by the industry.
Yeah. Right. So you have that you have that longing, shall I call it? So can you elaborate more in terms of your current involvement in Takaful? Because I know we've spoken, about the importance of having a proper infrastructure to support the industry. Because the Takaful industry, I mean, ultimately, the Islamic financial system as well does require a support system and ensure that there is a steady flow, if you like, in terms of talented and educated, from perspective, not just in terms of technicality, but also perspective Sharia into the industry in order to ensure that, it grows. So what currently do you do?
Four things. Firstly, I am the president of the Chartered Institute of Islamic Finance. And whilst we look at all the three major or four sectors, banking, wealth planning, Takaful, and we basically the objective is to enhance and promote professionalism of those who are working in the industry. So setting standards and setting examination frameworks, to be recognized as an Islamic finance professional. Certainly, the area of Takaful tends to be overlooked a bit because the institute and the industry is more skewed towards banking. But we are trying hard to set proper educational frames or parameters for the Takaful learning. The bank Bank Negara and FAA in the past had come up with, not Bank Negara, but FAA, the Financial Accreditation Agency, came up with a professional qualification framework for the various sectors in Islamic finance, and they came up with a very holistic framework for Takaful learning, and we would be trying to promote that. By promotion, I mean making it more utilized by training bodies, by academic institutions, as well as by Takaful companies as well, because the framework is very good. That's one area. The other area is I still talk about Takaful. I am involved in a program with the International Islamic University. They have got a certificate in Takaful practice program running with one Takaful operator, and we are hoping that can be that will also be taken up by other Takaful operators as well, because it gives a very good grounding for those who have just entered the Takaful sector. I also do a bit of mentoring and coaching online, because from my writings at LinkedIn, I write on a daily basis. I try to write on a daily basis. There are people who have requested for engagements with me, and one of the things that I do is that I prefer to have such mentoring on a longer term basis, so that then I can help them with their career development and them grow in their career path. Other than that, there are ad hoc requests for talks, sharing of experience like this podcast. so I get myself still involved with the industry.
Yeah, because you're still passionate about the industry. I can tell. Yeah. Anyway, I mean, when you say born again Muslim, I think now basically you've graduated, I suppose. If you don't mind, I would like to tell something which can be controversial. I mean, this is 40 years already because of the anniversary of Takaful in Malaysia. So after 40 years, what is your reading of the acceptance of Takaful as a viable alternative to insurance? In the previous podcast, Dato Fazli mentioned that he still gets basically comments that, is Takaful really Sharia compliant? I mean, we have this within the Muslim sort of ummah, if you like, still doubts in terms of Islamic banking, Islamic Takaful, in terms of Takaful. I mean, can you provide your views in terms of, acceptance of Takaful as a viable alternative to insurance?
That's a very sensitive question.
That's why I say controversial.
My personal view is that I think we have not done enough to explain Takaful. We have not done enough to show the difference in the concept, although primarily both conventional insurance and Takaful is about the many contributing to a pool to pay for the misfortune of the few, but the underlying basis of contribution to the pool is different. Is different. As we say, one is based on risk sharing and one is based on risk transfer. Part of the problem, I think, why people do not see the difference is the way in which we Takaful operators behave as well. Behave as well. And I use behave in a very broad word. We behave as if we are insurance companies, right? Our structure do not provide, does not show, does not reflect enough of the mutual elements, right? I think if we are able to incorporate, if we're able to show more visibility of mutuality in what we do, then it would help with an acceptance that Takaful is different. I am really waiting anxiously for the regulators' framework on ta'awun. They came up with a paper in broadening the concept of cooperation, allowing Takaful operators to expand on their models, to allow for a wider use of the funds. But it has been 2 years and there's not been much progress there.
Can you explain a bit in terms of that? Because we are aware of the concept now that that we if we were to be a contributor to a Takaful fund, all right, the portion that goes into the risk pool is a tabaruk, basically is a donation, as it were. and this is necessary because from the perspective of Sharia, there is an element of gara, uncertainty, in terms of the utilization of the funds, as it were. So basically this tabaruk sort of a it's not a contract per se, I don't think, but it's basically the process, we like, in terms of what these contributions are called, does allow this pool to be Sharia compliant. So under the Bank Negara Ta'awun sort of concept, maybe elaborate a bit more. Is Bank Negara looking at even utilizing the Tabaruk fund for other than the existing participants? How exactly does it work?
Well, my reading of it, and it's been 2 years since I looked at it, so can't actually remember the exact detail, is that it is allowing operators to set up a separate fund for it as well. Let's say like a contingency fund.
Oh, okay.
Like a contingency fund. I mean, it's exactly like what Takaful Ikhlas used to have when we started 20 years ago, right? And that contingency fund can be used for specified purposes other than just paying for risk, other than just paying for solvency, inadequacy, etc. So you can specify on that. So
that's important. I mean, this is go back to what we said just now in terms of differentiation, because in an insurance company, that option is not there because because it's a risk transfer. Then whatever is the surplus funds in the risk pool belongs to the shareholders, and of course the shareholders is not going to share this surplus with other than within among themselves. So what we're trying to say here is that expansion, if you like, in terms of the role that Takaful plays in the society,
right?
To allow it to be more differentiated, if you like, from insurance.
Right.
So utilization of, I think that the nearest that you can come to comparability with the insurance industry is this concept called the estate. In life insurance, for example, you have surplus funds built up, from policyholders who have long gone. So your obligations towards the policyholders who contributed to this estate is done. Right. And therefore the money does not belong to any policyholder, and therefore effectively, that could be, if necessary, transferred to the shareholders. So here we have a similar estate, if you like, in terms of Takaful risk pool that can be utilized because of the fact that the participants who contributed to this surplus, their obligations have already been fulfilled. So we can use these funds for other purposes. It goes back to some extent to the cooperatives, because one of the things that we did not discuss is your strong kind of sort of association with cooperatives, and perhaps this is to some extent going towards that.
Talking about cooperatives, my great-grandfather, my grandfather, my father were all in the cooperative movement. Yeah. So I sort of grew up in a cooperative environment, But coming back to the point about doing more, over here there are two conventional insurance companies who are doing a little bit more.
Conventional insurance companies.
Who
are doing a bit more than just the normal insurance business.
No, the normal insurance. There's one with an international affiliation that has got a global initiative to provide part of the premium to underserved and unserved sectors as well as OKUs.
CSR, if you like, when it's specific.
It is, well, you can say it is CSR, but it is clearly stated as the purpose of that particular policy as well. It's not just grouping everything and then depending and then seeing how much you have at the end of the day and then putting aside some money for charity work. But it is specific to a particular portfolio that they have, and they actually articulate it outright
to the policyholders.
To the policyholders, and similarly with another local digital insurance company as well.
Okay.
Yeah. So they have that. But we don't see such articulation coming from Takaful operators yet, lah.
Yeah. But Bangar is actively pursuing this option.
The central bank has been talking about. What's the term?
Value-based.
VBI is one. Social insurance.
Social insurance. And this is a topic perhaps can be explored in the podcast, but because it's important to appreciate that it's an evolving process. Takaful, 40 years is fine, but now we need to look at the next 40 years. Which brings me to the final question I have for you today, Dato. Have you any words of advice for the current crop of Takaful CEOs? not just in Malaysia, but also overseas. Because, I mean, the mindset, if you like, in terms of the CEO, basically permeates throughout the whole company. In terms of what the CEO wants to achieve going forward. Of course, the CEO has been, there's an oversight of the board, if you like, to ensure that the CEO meets his KPIs. But, I mean, if you take insurance CEO and just plant it in a Takaful operation, notwithstanding the fact that, that happened to you at the beginning, but then again, you were already sort of very aware that, the way in which Takaful Ikhlas should be run has to be different from insurance. But going back to what I said before, if you were to transplant insurance CEO into a Takaful operation, I'm sure initially, he or she would be, first of all, persuaded to ensure that, the what was done in insurance, can also be done in Takaful. Okay, and notwithstanding the fact that Takaful is not just simply a name change. So what would be your advice to the Takaful CEOs in terms of how they should take the industry to the next step going forward?
Just two things lah. Firstly, build a culture of excellence within the organization. And whilst it's simple in its words, a culture of excellence, but when it comes to implementing it, there's a lot of things to be looking at. So essentially, it is developing quality management at every level, as well as building or inculcating the right values into everyone. That's one. The other thing perhaps is the tendency of things, the speed at which things happen nowadays has to be faster, has to be driven, has to be monitored. So to me, an appreciation of today's concept of project management is very essential. Digital tools are there, digital applications are there to help us monitor and deliver projects. But the problem always is that sometimes we deliver the actions but not the outcomes. And there is as such a need to also do a post-implementation review. So to me, on one side is the culture, and the other side is the a process that CEOs need to be looking at. And of course, within the culture, Sharia values falls into that area as well. I think where Malaysian Takaful operators are concerned, the target to achieve 75% penetration is still there. We set out to deliver that by 2020. We have not been able to achieve that, and we need to be delivering that by 2030. And that can only happen if we are all focused on the things that we want to do, if we monitor those things diligently, and we ensure that what we deliver flows through in the longer term as well. And lastly, I think we need to get all stakeholders together to understand what we are striving to do. And by that, I mean not just company staff, but also the shareholders as well as our intermediaries as well.
On that note, Dato, thank you very much again for sparing the time for this podcast. Sure. And I'm sure that our audience will be able to take away many sort of important points and advice. Because I always of the view that the best teacher in life is experience, and it is basically we must take this opportunity, to pass through the experience of those pioneers in Takaful for the next batch of Takaful lights, to ensure that over the next subsequent 40 years, we can be proud of what we have achieved. Thank you again for
Thank you for having
coming.
me. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this podcast.